UK got caught with its pants down this week. A little recording got leaked revealing that their own attorneys, the attorneys for the government, are advising them that Israel is in violation of international law. Breaking. The government's own lawyers say that Israel has breached international law, but is refusing to make it public. The advice says the UK has to cease all arms sales to Israel without delay. So here's some of that leaked audio.
He is fighting very hard. So first of all, two-state solution does not help Hamas. No. That hurts Hamas in every single way. That helps, that destroys some of the narratives of the recent basis. Two-state solution does not help them. Secondly, the Foreign Office has received official legal advice that Israel has broken international humanitarian law, but the government has not announced it. They have not said it. They haven't stopped arms exports. They've done a few very small sanctions on Israeli settlers, and everyone internationally has agreed that settlers are illegal, that they shouldn't be doing what they're doing, and the way in which they've continued, the money that's been put in. The position that David has taken, which happens to be the same position as me, I've still been very tough on him, is that Israel has an absolute right to self-defense. And I have sat in bunkers and worked with Israeli soldiers and been very proud to do so, and I would do it again tomorrow. But the right to self-defense has a limit in law. It is not limitless. And unfortunately, some of the ways in which Israel is prosecuting this is making their long-term security less certain. It is making our long-term security less certain. I'm amazed that our national threat level has not gone up. And it breaks my heart because I know it could be done differently. So the problem is we need a long-term security for Israel. That does not happen without a Palestinian state. And that is how we ultimately undermine Hamas. You cannot, and I spent 2.5 years of my life fighting ISIS, you cannot destroy an ideology. You cannot bomb it into obliteration. So we need that long-term solution.
Okay. All right. So, with typical British understatement, they may have committed a faux pas. UK government lawyers say Israel's breaking international law, claims top Tory in leaked recording. The British government has received advice from its own lawyers stating that Israel has breached international humanitarian law in Gaza, but has failed to make it public, according to a leaked recording obtained by The Observer. The comments made by the Conservative chair of the House of Commons Select Committee on Foreign Affairs, Alicia Kearns, at a Tory fundraising event on 13 March, are at odds with repeated ministerial denials and evasion on the issue. On Saturday night, Kearns, a former Foreign Office and Ministry of Defense official who has repeatedly pressed ministers, including Foreign Secretary David Cameron, on the legal advice they have received, stood by her comments and called for the government to come clean. Quote, "I remain convinced the government has completed its updated assessment on whether Israel is demonstrating a commitment to international humanitarian law, and that it has concluded that Israel is not demonstrating this commitment, which is the legal determination it has to make," she said. "Transparency at this point is paramount, not least to uphold the international rules-based order." That's that British love of irony, the international rules-based order. "The revelation will place Lord Cameron and Prime Minister Rishi Sunak under intense pressure because any such legal advice would mean the UK had to cease all arms sales to Israel without delay. Legal experts said that not to do so would risk putting the UK in breach of international law itself, as it would be seen as aiding and abetting war crimes by a country it was exporting arms to." Well, that's a sticky wicket, isn't it? Answering questions at an evening drinks reception hosted by the West Hempstead and Fortune Green Conservatives in London, Kearns said the Foreign Office has received official legal advice that Israel has broken international humanitarian law, but the government has not announced it. The UK's arms exports to Israel amounted to £42 million in 2022, a figure described as by Defense Secretary Grant Shapps as relatively small. But former Lord Chancellor Charles Falconer said a legal assessment that Israel had broken international law would also prevent the UK sharing intelligence with Israel. Quote, governments who abide by the rule of law cannot ignore mounting evidence of breach, which would then put those governments in breach if they continued assisting, he said. In a session of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee in January, Cameron was asked directly by Kearns whether, quote, you have ever had a piece of paper put in front of you by a Foreign Office lawyer that says that Israel is in breach of its international humanitarian commitments under international humanitarian law. Cameron stated that, quote, I cannot recall every single bit of paper that has been put in front of me. I don't want to answer that question. He later said that, if you are asking me whether I am worried that Israel has taken action that might be in breach of international law, yes, of course I am worried about that. That is why I consult the Foreign Office lawyers when giving this advice on arms exports. Other UK ministers have previously claimed that Israel has abided by international law. In late November, Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch said on Sky News that we've always said that Israel should abide by international law, and that appears to be what they have done. I'm sorry. That's just how, even by late November, how could you say such a thing? It looks like they have taken great pains to make sure that they're staying within the confines of the law. We applaud them for that. Wow. Wow. Labor has repeatedly called for the government to be transparent about the legal advice it has received. So there you go. Their lawyers behind the scene are telling them, hey, man, the jig is up, but they're not saying so publicly, because to say so publicly would have a lot of legal ramifications. So it sounds like they're just in a holding pattern of denial, trying to figure out how they can continue to support Israel without ending up in the dock one day. Keaton?
Well, as you have this genocide unfolding, all of the, more liberal regimes that are in power have to figure out a way to thread this needle, because they're supposed to be the ones who are keeping the racists at bay, right? And even though, Rishi Sunak is a conservative, he's still, in his mind and in the minds of, I think, most of the people who voted for him, represent a sort of reasonable alternative to the more populist, movements. And certainly here, that's the case with Biden being the bulwark against Trump and the deplorable racists who are going to take power. But they have to present themselves as an alternative to that kind of base racism in their mind, while also backing a white settler colonial state as it genocides a population of imprisoned brown people. And so the only way you can do that is to keep communications like that hush hush, because that gives away the entire game. It's amazing to me, though, how these conversations even take place. It's just amazing how anyone can operate under any pretense but that Israel is a rogue criminal terrorist state, and they should be dealt with accordingly. That doesn't mean wipe them off the map. It means isolate them. Isolate them the way we place sanctions on countries that have not committed 1,000th the crimes that they have. And that's the only serious conversation to be having around this right now, in terms of their behavior, in terms of how do we fix what's happening before, as you mentioned a few segments ago, hundreds of thousands of people die of famine and disease in the coming months. That's a much more complicated question, a much more difficult problem to solve, an urgent one, but a difficult one. The question of what is Israel and how do we handle Israel? That's simple. That's cut and dry right now, to the point where it's amazing to me that these conversations even take place.
Well, I think the position that Brazil has taken, that Ireland has taken, that Spain has taken, it's going to become increasingly indefensible not to take that position, to stop having trade relations with Israel, to certainly stop arms shipment to Israel. Because as we discussed in the previous segment, The images coming out of Gaza are about to become even more horrific than what you've already seen. And maintaining the pretense that Israel has very effectively maintained for 75 years, that they are the victim, is just going to be impossible. It's going to be impossible for these governments to maintain that premise. And you can see where all of the momentum is going in stories like this, where you have lawyers warning the government, well, you don't want to be in The Hague, do you? So Israel has violated international law. That has certain implications. They're not going to be able to continue to deny that. And from what I know, I think even under the EU, all of the EU countries have the same legal obligations not to support genocide and war crimes. So once that momentum hits a tipping point, they're all going to have to take that position. And that is really the end of Israel being able to function. Now, our country is so, okay, I won't use a certain word so that it'll be easier to clip for YouTube, but our company is so mentally defective, shall we say, that even in the face of that, will probably continue as Israel's ally. And that will be its lifeline in the face of that.
In the short term, I think that's definitely true. But, you know, we covered on our show last week that support for military operations in Gaza is now 36% here in the U.S.
Right.
And I think that number will continue to go down. Now, in the short term, you have so many of these lifers who have just been in office forever and who, as we're going to see a couple segments down the road, just unbelievably dogmatic in their support for Israel. You know, are they going to be replaced with people who are anti-Israel? No, not in the short term. But the writing is on the wall. You know, this is a really formative experience for a lot of younger people, millennials like myself, but especially Gen Zers, in the way that the Iraq War was a formative experience for some of my generation. But the Iraq War wasn't on social media, you know. The Iraq War wasn't on Instagram. There was no TikTok back then. And so, you know, while maybe they should age restrict social media for 14-year-olds, it's important that these 18, 19, 20-year-olds have access to this, because it gives you access to alternative information that is actually true and actually is very enlightening and has actually caused you know, this real spark amongst younger people to hit the streets over this, and they're not going to forget this. And so, you know, I think in the short term, you're right. But we're talking about, even here in the U.S., I think we're 20 years out probably from, you know, the kind of sentiments currently being expressed by, you know, the so-called marginal voices, you know, on campuses and the fringe left, right? Whatever they used to call it. Those will become mainstream fairly soon. This is not going to last. It can't. It's not possible for this to be forgiven or forgotten. The people who are just so dogmatic as to back Israel through this will not be here in 20 years. And good thing for it, I'll say.
Yeah. Something that really strikes me preparing the show and working on our show just overall is how illegitimate all of our leaders are. Sunak, Biden, I mean, these people are just, they're jokes. They're jokes. Yeah. Macron, Trudeau, who do they represent? Who likes these people?
Old people. I'm sorry, I know that's a third rail, but old people
who disproportionately vote.
Yes.
But it is amazing that these people who really don't represent the majority of the public in their respective countries are in power. And everywhere you look in the West, it's the same. It's these fundamentally illegitimate leaders who only speak to this very small elite class that has the delusion that it represents a lot of people because of their institutional power. So the media reflects them back at themselves and they think that's the world. And they don't realize that's actually a very small sliver of the world. But unfortunately, it is a sliver of the world that disproportionately votes because they feel like this is for them. This is about them. People who feel like it's not for them, they get disenfranchised. They stop voting.
Exactly. And that's not, I mean, yes, that of course, like, yeah, people who benefit off the system most feel especially connected to it. And so, yes, the sort of elites and elite adjacent wannabe elite types are obviously drawn into the system. But when I was, covering the New Hampshire primaries, I went to a couple of Nikki Haley events. There are some nice salt of the earth, folksy people there of modest means. There's just an innocence about some people where you can watch someone like Nikki Haley go up and just deliver the most boilerplate, transparently full of shit speech. And these just very nice people, mostly older people. Yes, I'm sorry. I hate to say that. Not to say there aren't older people who are with it. Obviously there are. But these audiences skew much older of people who probably, they grew up in simpler times. And so they are simpler in that way. By simple, I don't mean stupid. I mean, they have a certain innocence about them. And they are susceptible to this kind of faux folksy sort of propaganda where, when Nikki Haley goes up there, I voted for Donald Trump twice, but man, chaos just has a way of following him. They nod very they believe that. They take it in. They take it all at face value that she's really leveling with them. And, this just doesn't register with them. That is the obstacle, because the only way to get rid of these people is to cultivate the kind of curiosity that would allow people to seek out information and perspective from sources that are going to train you to challenge these kinds of narratives. And it's too late for a lot of people who have disproportionate influence over who gets elected into office now. That's why I say in the short term, you're not going to see much change in the halls of Congress. You're going to have to force whatever change through by working outside the system. That's why these protests are so fucking important.
Yes.
But, I'd be lying if I said in the short term, things are going to turn around very quickly here. But in the long term, they will. I'm very confident of that.
Well, you know what? I'm not going to ruin that optimistic button you put on that segment, right, Keaton. It's so rare.
Hey, there's still tickets available in Stockholm, Oslo, Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, Cortland, New York, Oakmont, Pennsylvania, El Paso, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Edmonton, Alberta, Vancouver, British Columbia, Denver, Ashland, Virginia, and Athens, Georgia. See you there.